This is Kirtop, and these are the 100 most secret archives in the world that we are not allowed into. A mystery in the Amazon jungle. Padre Carlos Crespi Croce, an Italian missionary who dedicated most of his life to serving in Ecuador, became one of the most mysterious figures of the 20th century thanks to his unusual collection of artifacts. While working with the Shuar tribes in the jungles of Ecuador, he acquired many ancient items that, according to some researchers, could be evidence of the existence of an ancient, highly developed civilization, and possibly even contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. Crespi's collection included strange metal plates with engraved symbols resembling ancient scripts, figurines depicting creatures with unusual features, and objects that many described as technologically sophisticated. The metal reliefs were especially intriguing, depicting beings with elongated skulls, stars, and scenes reminiscent of space travel. Interestingly, there were no known civilizations in this region that could have produced such complex artifacts. Rumors about the collection spread after some visitors, including researchers, claimed to have seen evidence of extraterrestrial influence in it. Some of the artifacts, according to witnesses, were made of metals that could not be identified. Crespi, however, was not seeking fame. He claimed that he received these items from local tribes in exchange for assistance and food. The connection of the collection with extraterrestrial civilizations becomes even more interesting if we consider the mystery of the tunnels under Ecuador, which are surrounded by legends. The tunnels, known as the Tayo system, are said to contain a library of metal books. Some theorists suggest that these tunnels were a base for an ancient race, possibly of extraterrestrial origin. The Crespi collection could have been part of these treasures. Unfortunately, after Padre Crespi's death in 1982, the collection was destroyed by fire or stolen, and its fate remains unclear. And what do you think? Could a missionary have become the keeper of traces of an ancient cosmic civilization in the jungles of the Amazon? A message from space. In the Inga River in Brazil, there is the mysterious Inga stone in the state of Paraíba, which causes a lot of debate in the archaeological community. Unknown geometric symbols are carved on the surface of this 46-meter gneiss stone. The origin and meaning of these symbols have not yet been revealed. What do you think? Do they testify to a forgotten civilization, or are they a message from our ancestors? This stone is no less ancient than the stones of the ages. There are other stones in caves with carvings nearby, but they are not as interesting. Archaeologist Gabriele Beraldi discovered the first Inga cave in 1988. He studied a total of 497 symbols on the cave walls. Most of them are mysterious, but some definitely depict cosmic objects, such as the Milky Way and the Orion constellation. Some scientists see similarities with ancient Phrygian and Egyptian scripts, while others compare them to runes. The creation of the symbols has shown that they may be connected to ancient beliefs, such as the fertility cult. One of the researchers suggested that the Inga stone might contain an ancient solar calendar. Other hypotheses suggest contacts with extraterrestrial civilizations, or even ancient formulas or mathematical equations. Ghosts of ice and deception of chronology. Antarctica is not a flyby. It's a giant freezer that knows how to keep secrets for decades and then throw them in the researcher's face. In 2025, the Bulgarian vessel St. Cyril and Methodius sailed the waters off the coast of Livingston Island. The official purpose was science. But what the drone discovered near Bernard Point instantly turned the expedition into an archaeological detective story. On the monitor screen, among the sleeping snow, jagged pieces of duralumin appeared. It was an Argentine military plane that disappeared here in 1976. 50 years ago, this aircraft was on a reconnaissance mission, monitoring navigation and ice. At one point, communication was lost, and the plane simply vanished into the white haze. Antarctica swallowed it whole. For 50 years, the pilots' families knew nothing until physicist Oleg Vasilyev launched a drone. But something else is even more interesting. Fragments of the plane had been found before in 2024, but only now, thanks to the technologies of 2025, the crash site was fully localized. The metal was perfectly preserved. The ice preserved the tragedy, not letting it age. But while Antarctica is honest in its words and archives, European soil knows how to cunningly deceive scientists. Let's move to Poland, the village of Bagich. Back in 1899, a princess was found here. Imagine a swamp, a huge oak trunk split in half, and inside the skeleton of a woman on a cowhide. Along with it were bronze, amber, and glass. Archaeologists confidently stated that this was the wheelbark culture, 2nd century AD. For 100 years, this version was considered the truth, until in 2018, they decided to conduct radiocarbon analysis of the teeth. And that's when chaos began. Carbon-14 revealed a date, the 1st century BC. It turned out that the woman was 300 years older than her own coffin and jewelry. Science hit a dead end. How could she wear things that would be invented 300 years after her death? Time travel? No. The truth turned out to be much more mundane and far more damaging to the reputation of the laboratories. The scientists decided to double-check the coffin itself. Dendrochronology, counting the tree rings, showed that the oak was cut down in 120 AD. That's it. The coffin doesn't lie. So why did the radiocarbon analysis give a false result? It turned out the princess's diet was to blame. She ate so much fish and seafood that her body became saturated with old carbon from the ocean. In science, this is called the reservoir effect. It can make a sample appear 1,000 years older. Moreover, the princess turned out to be an ordinary laborer. Osteoarthritis on her bones shows that she worked hard all her life, never resting her hands. These two discoveries, the airplane and the skeleton, show us two sides of archaeology. One, when ice preserves the truth for 50 years, and the other, when an ordinary meal of fish can fool the most expensive robots by 3 centuries. Maya cosmogram. In southern Mexico, in the state of Tabasco, archaeologists studied the Aguada Phoenix site, a huge earthen structure hidden under the forest. It's almost invisible in satellite images, but LIDAR, a laser scanning technology capable of removing vegetation, revealed the clear outlines of a platform almost 1.5 kilometers long. It turned out to be older than all known Maya centers, dating back to around 1000 BC, which is 1,000 years earlier than their famous pyramids and cities appeared. They found remains of canals, dams, and straight roads around the platform, all aligned with the cardinal directions. All of this looks like a carefully planned complex built without stone, only from earth and clay. Scientists call Aguada Phoenix a cosmogram. This is not a temple or a city, but rather a symbolic space, a model of the world embodied in the landscape. Judging by the findings, mass gatherings, rituals, and feasts took place here. There are no signs of kings, palaces, or sculptures. It appears everything was built collectively by communities, not under a central leader. This discovery was unexpected for archaeologists. It was previously believed that monumental structures among the Maya appeared only after the formation of complex cities and an elite. Aguada Phoenix shows the opposite. Large structures could have appeared before states as a result of collective efforts. Today, the site continues to be studied. For locals, it's a growing point of pride. For archaeologists, it shows history doesn't always move in a straight line. Sometimes people create not for power, but for an idea. Goddess of Death, Cyprus, Settlement of Lem, a small limestone figurine from around 3500 BC. A female silhouette, broad shoulders, arms akimbo, a stump for a head. Usually such figures are interpreted as fertility figurines, but with this one, things didn't go as planned. The first modern owner was Lord Elfand. Within 6 years, all 7 members of his family died. The figurine was passed on, and in the next 3 households, similar stories happened. Sudden deaths, illnesses, accidents. When the new owner suspected a connection, he donated the figurine to the Royal Scottish Museum in Edinburgh. There, the rumors only grew stronger. One of the curators who worked with the exhibit died within a year. That's how the nickname Goddess of Death was born. What's real and what's legend? Few documents exist on early owners, and the dates often conflict. The curse likely arose from coincidences and repeated press stories. The chain of events is so frightening that the figure is now firmly among cursed collections, like Egyptian mummies and the Bassano vase. The irony is that originally, it was most likely made as a symbol of life and fertility, a statuette of a goddess who was supposed to bring children, not take them away. Today, the artifact is presented as an archaeological fact, with a curse culture built around that fact. But if I'm talking about strange discoveries, I can't ignore the Lemba goddess. It's a rare case when a small piece of limestone gave rise to a legend that survived a 4,000-year journey from a Cypriot village to a museum display. A colorful Egyptian tomb. The Egyptian deserts continue to reveal the secrets of an ancient civilization known for its majestic pyramids. Recently, the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities unveiled a well-preserved tomb that is over 4,000 years old. The tomb is attributed to a high-ranking official named Kui from the 5th dynasty. This monument is part of the extensive necropolis in Saqqara, south of Cairo. The tomb has a unique shape. An L-shaped corridor leads to a spacious hall with paintings depicting Kui at a table with sacrificial offerings. Some of the paintings retain bright colors associated with royalty. Archaeologists are trying to figure out the relationship between Kui and Pharaoh Djedkare-i-Sesi, whose pyramid is nearby. One theory suggests that they might have been relatives. Mummified remains of Kui and broken canopic jars for organs were also found in the tomb. The secret to survival in an icy hell. We tend to think of ancient people as primitive, but 12,000 years ago in the caves of Oregon, they were solving problems that today only an engineer could handle. Archaeologists found fragments of clothing made from moose skin there. This is the oldest workwear in history, and its existence is the main reason why our species survived at all. 45,000 years ago, modern humans were the only ones who dared to live permanently above the 45th parallel. This is a zone of extreme cold, where biodiversity is almost zero. In such conditions, clothing is not an accessory, but a survival technology. Scientists have proven that in an icy climate, complex, form-fitting clothing is more important than food. You can survive without calories for weeks, but you can die from the cold in just a few hours. The choice of material in Oregon was perfect. They used small game for traps, but clothing was made strictly from moose. Its hide is thicker and has phenomenal thermal insulation. Researchers found not only scraps of fur in the caves, but also fragments of ropes, complex trigger mechanisms for catching rabbits, and tools made from different types of wood. It was a real industry. People were not just surviving, they were creating systems that allowed them to dominate where other species perished. But while some were battling the cold, others in France were making a revolution in art. In the Chauvet Cave, an image of a bear was found that is 32,000 years old. Its technique is astonishing. The artist used only 4 meters, 14 lines. This is pure minimalism. To give the animal volume, the master used shading, smudging the pigment with his fingers or a piece of hide. Just a couple of strokes, and before us is a living predator with character and power. These two discoveries, the fragments of skin and the drawing in Chauvet, show two sides of our past. On one hand, precise calculation and advanced sewing technology allowed us to conquer the North. On the other hand, the birth of the human spirit when a hunter, between battles for survival, found time to create a world-class masterpiece. Rosetta. 1. One of the greatest archaeological discoveries, which gave the world the key to deciphering ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, is the Rosetta Stone. It was discovered by Officer Pierre-François Bouchard in July 1799 during Napoleon's campaign in Egypt. The stone immediately attracted attention thanks to its unique trilingual inscription. This granodiorite block contained a decree dated to 196 BC during the reign of King Ptolemy IV Epiphanes. The inscription was made in 3 languages: ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs at the top, Demotic script, which was a simplified writing popular at that time, in the middle, and ancient Greek at the bottom. The uniqueness of the stone was that the Greek text was the key to deciphering the other two. The French scholar Jean-François Champollion completed the deciphering process in 1822, which became a revolutionary breakthrough in Egyptology. The Rosetta Stone made it possible to understand ancient Egyptian culture, religion, and history, which had previously been hidden behind unread hieroglyphs. Although this is one of the most important discoveries in the history of archaeology, even more significant archaeological discoveries await you ahead. The Leather Book. In Egypt, restorers are working with one of the oldest Quranic manuscripts. It is over 1,200 years old and weighs almost 80 kilograms. This is not a scroll or an ordinary book. It is a giant volume made up of 1,087 pages. Each page is made from tanned animal skin. The ink has darkened, the text is barely readable, but the letters are crafted by hand with amazing precision. Every character looks like a pattern. Scientists believe that this manuscript dates back to the 8th century and was probably created in one of the early Islamic centers, Kufa or Basra. The work of restorers takes years. Each page is cleaned, reinforced, and fixed under a microscope. At the same time, specialists note that despite its age, the structure of the parchment is almost intact. This is one of the rare cases where the artifact was preserved not due to climate, but because of its immense size. The heavy, dense pages effectively sealed the text inside. For Muslims, this book is not just a monument of faith, but a part of the history of writing. In it, you can see the transition from ancient Arabic script to a more familiar style, as well as how religion turned text into art. The First King. Belize, the jungles of Caracol. For almost 40 years, the archaeologist couple Arlen and Diana Chase excavated stairs, markets, and dams here until they reached the heart of the Khan complex. Under a layer of slabs, they found a narrow passage behind which a chamber painted with cinnabar was revealed. On the floor lay a skeleton, its shoulders draped with jade beads. Nearby were 11 painted vessels, carved bone tubes, a mosaic mask, and spiny oyster shells the color of raw meat. The hieroglyphs on the stele have long referred to the first ruler of the city, Tekabchak. Now the text matches the bone. The dating is around the year 350, only 3 decades after the ascension. It turns out that Caracol was an independent power even before the famous arrival of the envoys from Teotihuacan in 378. It didn't awaken from foreign influence. It was already ruling, trading, and collecting tribute. The objects around the body speak for themselves. Jade is a sign of royal blood. Cinnabar symbolizes the power of sacrifice. Spondylus shells indicate long-distance trade through the Caribbean. And the thin bone tubes are attributes of priests who inhaled cocoa powder before rituals. All of this is not a random assortment. It's a portrait of the state assembled in the personal capsule of its founder. For scientists, this is not just a skeleton, but the first chapter of Caracol's history, hidden by vines for almost 1,500 years. Where did the last Spartans live? Imagine a place in Europe that voluntarily erased itself from world history for 1,500 years. Southern Greece, the Mani Peninsula, a harsh land where the cliffs of Tagetes plunge into the sea, and the villages look like clusters of battle citadels. For centuries, the locals claimed that they were direct descendants of the Spartans, preserving the faith and blood of their ancestors. For a long time, this was considered just a beautiful legend, until in 2025, geneticists from Oxford decided to test it using DNA analysis. The intrigue began back in the 9th century. The Byzantine emperor, Constantine VII Porphyrogenitos, wrote something unimaginable in his chronicles. He said that while most of the world prayed to Christ for centuries, Mani's people still worshiped the Olympian gods. Zeus, Athena, and Poseidon remained their reality until the very end. The emperor emphasized these people have nothing in common with the Slavs who settled the Balkans. He called them Hellenes, a term that at the time was almost an insult, synonymous with an incorrigible pagan. For a long time, scholars wondered whether this was an exaggeration or if Mani truly became a preserve of antiquity. DNA research on the peninsula's indigenous people produced a staggering result. It turned out that Mani is a true genetic island, which has hardly participated in the demographic processes of Europe in recent decades. More than 80% of the male population here carries the JM172 haplogroup. This is the very genetic branch that dominated the southern Balkans during the Bronze and Iron Ages. While the rest of Greece was turning into a genetic melting pot due to wars and migrations, the Maniots preserved their biological code intact. Their population structure is nearly unchanged from the classical and Roman periods. Scientists were essentially studying people whose ancestors could have built temples to the Olympians. The reason for such isolation lies in geography and unique architecture. Mani is a natural fortress. Any campaign here was suicide, but the main tool for survival became the family towers. All over the peninsula, Fortified citadels made of gray stone with loophole windows are scattered. The genetic map of the region perfectly matched the map of the distribution of these towers. The clans that owned the land 1,000 years ago still remain on it today. Analysis showed that more than half of the men of Deep Mani descend from just one ancestor who lived in the 7th century AD. That was a period of total chaos, plague, raids by Arabs, and the Slavic migration. At that moment, the ancestors of modern Manites simply shut the door. They went into deep defense, building their towers and guarding the purity of their lineage. At the same time, the female DNA line turned out to be more diverse, which indicates a strict patriarchal order. The men never left their cliffs, while women occasionally entered the communities through rare marriages. Mani is living proof that antiquity did not perish under the blows of the barbarians. It simply hid in the stone towers at the edge of Europe. The last Hellenes never left. All this time they were at home, guarding the DNA of those who once believed in the power of the Olympian gods. A casket with relics of Polish monarchs. This elegant casket, inscribed with the name Izabela Czartoryska, is not just an antique item, but a true symbol of Polish history. In 1800, Princess Izabela Czartoryska gathered a collection of relics related to Polish kings and great historical events in it. A total of 73 items were kept in the casket, ranging from personal belongings of monarchs to fragments of weapons and clothing, symbolizing national heritage and the spirit of resistance. Izabela considered it her mission to preserve Polish identity during the difficult times of the country's partitions. Her casket became part of Poland's first museum, the Temple of Sibyl, established in Puławy, where she invited guests to remind them of the glory of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Unfortunately, like many national treasures, the casket did not escape a tragic fate. In 1939, during the Nazi invasion of Poland, it was looted, and to this day, some of the relics are considered lost. The mysterious steel sanatorium. In Cleveland, on the shore of Lake Erie, in 1928, a giant steel sphere about 20 meters high, with 38 rooms inside, began operating. The structure was built with funds from industrialist Henry Timken, following the initiative of Dr. Furman Cunningham, an anesthesiologist who believed that increased pressure and an oxygen mixture could treat a wide range of diseases. The building had 5 floors with living rooms and bathrooms, as well as a powerful climate control system, 3 compressors, 2 boilers, an ammonia cooler weighing about 27 tons, and filters that allowed control of pressure, temperature, humidity, and circulation. Cunningham's method was based on the mistaken assumption that many diseases are caused by anaerobic bacteria and can be treated with oxygen therapy under pressure. The Bureau of Investigation of the American Medical Association called the project commercial, not scientific, the year it opened. In 1934, James Rand Jr. bought the facility and renamed it the Ohio Institute of Oxygen Therapy, but there was no steady flow of patients. 2 years later, the complex was resold and unsuccessfully tried as a regular clinic. By 1942, the steel sphere was dismantled for metal to meet the needs of the war industry. Cunningham's ideas were not confirmed regarding cancer, diabetes, and universal healing. However, hyperbaric oxygenation found limited medical use in cases of decompression sickness, carbon monoxide poisoning, and a number of tissue healing problems. This no longer has anything to do with the steel sanatorium itself. Sacsayhuaman is a majestic fortress located at an altitude of 3,701 meters on the northern outskirts of Cusco, the ancient capital of the Inca Empire in Peru. Built in the 15th century during the reign of the great Sapa Inca Pachacuti and his successors, Sacsayhuaman is considered one of the most outstanding achievements of Inca engineering and architecture. The complex was strategically located to protect Cusco and its inhabitants, as well as to serve as an important ceremonial center. The most impressive feature of Sacsayhuaman is its massive walls, built from giant blocks of gray limestone. These boulders, some of which weigh more than 100 tons, were skillfully carved and fitted together with remarkable precision, without the use of any mortar. Despite the enormous size and weight of the stones, the joints between them are so tight that not even a knife blade can fit between the blocks. This demonstrates the incredible skills and knowledge of the Incas in construction, which continue to amaze and puzzle scientists and engineers. In addition, the structure of Sacsayhuaman has a zigzag shape, which adds an extra level of complexity to its construction and suggests a well-thought-out strategic and symbolic significance. The fortress was used not only for defense, but also for religious and state ceremonies, making it an important spiritual and cultural center. The gold of the immortals and the jade shield. In ancient times, gold was not just a currency, it was the flesh of the gods, guaranteeing its owner status in the world of the dead. In 2025, archaeologists in Panama opened a tomb in El Caño Park that literally dazzled the researchers. This is the burial of an elite chief, dated to the year 800 AD inside. There were not just ornaments, but a real arsenal of power made of pure gold. In the deep shaft, archaeologists discovered massive bracelets, carved chest plates, and gold ear ornaments. But what amazed the scientists was not the value of the metal, but its design. Bats and crocodiles are engraved on the gold fierce guides to the afterlife. The level of metalworking proves that the craftsmen of Panama mastered the most complex techniques hundreds of years before the arrival of Europeans. This was not an isolated village, but a powerful dynastic center where gold was used as a tool to demonstrate power. But while in Panama the rulers relied on the shine of metal, in Guatemala the Maya chiefs believed in the magic of eternal stone. In the tomb of the founder of one of the great dynasties, archaeologists found the mask of Tecapchac. It is made up of hundreds of jade mosaic pieces. For the Maya, this stone was more valuable than gold. Jade symbolized eternal breath and life. The mask served as a kind of biological shield for the soul. It was placed on the face of the deceased king to protect his domain and to declare his divine status before the ancestors. Every detail of the mask, from the mother-of-pearl eyes to the inlays of seashells, is a clear message. This person remains a ruler even in the realm of death. Sometimes, power required not only gold, but also brilliant propaganda. When the Persian king Darius I conquered Egypt 2,500 years ago, he faced a problem of legitimacy. The Egyptians hated the invaders. Then Darius made a chess move in politics. He ordered himself to be depicted on reliefs in traditional attire as an Egyptian pharaoh. The Persian ruler on the walls of temples wore Egyptian crowns and symbols of power, calling himself the beloved of the god Amon. Darius understood that symbols work more effectively than swords. By adopting the look of a pharaoh, he transformed from an occupier into the legitimate heir of the gods in the eyes of the locals. This was an example of soft power in ancient times, where image and art were used to govern vast territories. These discoveries, the golden crocodiles from Panama, the jade Mayan mask, and the Persian king in a pharaoh's crown, show that ancient rulers did not simply amass wealth. They built their image from the most durable materials, believing that gold, stone, and the right symbol could deceive time and keep them at the forefront of history forever. A non-biblical miracle. The famous biblical miracle, when Moses supposedly parted the waters of the Red Sea to lead the Israelites, was considered supernatural intervention for many centuries. However, modern scientists offer a much more down-to-earth explanation, and it is immediate. A new study has shown that about 3,500 years ago, weather and geographical conditions could very well have created the effect described in the Old Testament. Scientists from the U.S. National Center for Atmospheric Research have proven with the help of a computer model that, with a wind speed of about 100 kilometers per hour, blowing in the right direction, the water could temporarily recede, exposing land up to 5 kilometers wide and then just as suddenly return like a tsunami wave. The biblical account says that the Lord made the sea move with a strong east wind all night. Researchers are convinced that the wind is the key to the mystery. The shallow and flat Gulf of Suez is now considered as the crossing site more often than the deep Gulf of Aqaba, since such a phenomenon would be possible there. It is also known that Napoleon led his army across the shallow waters there during low tide in 1789, but almost drowned on the way back. There are other hypotheses as well. For example, the crossing might not have been over the Red Sea, but over Tanis, the so-called Sea of Reeds, which is mentioned in the original Hebrew. Or the water could have receded because of an earthquake and tsunami, as happens in modern disasters when a wave pulls the water far from the shore. The secret of the ancient miracle may be less about breaking nature's laws and more about precise timing, location, and faith. Ancient structure in the Black Sea. Off the coast of Abkhazia, scientists from an international underwater archaeological expedition discovered important archaeological finds. With the help of special equipment and divers, they explored depths from 1 to 60 meters in the waters near the cities of Gudauta and Sukhum. The most significant discovery was the remains of a medieval structure in the Sukhum Bay, at the mouth of the Besledka River, where the ancient city of Dioscuria is believed to have been located. In this area, where an ancient stele had previously been found, archaeologists discovered a semicircular masonry structure, probably a tower with attached walls. It is made of large pebbles with a limestone mortar. There is pottery present in the masonry. Due to the large amount of sand and silt in the water, it was difficult to photograph the object, so a detailed survey is planned for 2024-2025. In the waters near the city of Gudauta, archaeologists found many vessels from the ancient and medieval periods, including an amphora at a depth of 164 feet. Mystical figurines. These unusual figurines from the ancient Mexican city of Dioscuria, Teotihuacan, are rare examples of the art and worldview of Aztec culture. Discovered in 1933 in the Metepec area by an American anthropologist, the figurines depict men and women with hollow, opening torsos. Inside, there are smaller figurines or objects, which has sparked much debate about their meaning and purpose. Such figurines are often called masters because of their peculiar contents. The hollow in the chest area is symbolically closed with a door, which hints at the concealment of knowledge, the hidden meaning or the concept of the inner self. Perhaps these figurines embody the philosophical concept of the Nahual, an inner spirit or companion that accompanied a person in their spiritual quests and in life along the path. Other interpretations suggest a connection between the figurines and symbols of fertility, nurturing, or spiritual growth. Perhaps they personified social or religious roles, a warrior, a ruler, a merchant, or a woman from the elite strata of Teotihuacan society. The fine detailing, as well as the ability to open and close the figurines, indicates a high level of craftsmanship by their creators. This unique design may have symbolized the interaction between the inner and outer worlds, as well as the desire to reveal hidden truths about human nature and the world. Stone spheroids aged 1.4 million years. In the 1960s, archaeologists in northern Israel discovered an unusual find, almost 600 stone spheres in an area dating back 1.5 million years. A recent analysis of 150 of these spheres showed that they were created by our ancestors. This discovery suggests that earlier hominids aimed to create symmetry and were interested in craftsmanship. The use of modern technology made it possible to accurately measure the angles and curvature of the sphere's surfaces, as well as determine their center of mass. The analysis showed that the spheroids represent a complex technology, indicating the high cognitive abilities and skills of early Acheulean people. Seemingly ordinary stone balls. How much can they tell us about our ancestors? 1.5 million years ago, our ancestors had completely different ways of thinking and needs, so the creation of such artifacts in those days was considered a huge achievement. The leaden death of the Roman Empire. There is a fascinating and frightening theory. The Roman Empire collapsed because the Romans literally drank themselves to death. Supposedly, lead from the water pipes caused infertility, dementia, and paralysis among the entire elite. Looking at the antics of Caligula or Nero, it's easy to believe. But in 2025, scientists finally proved that lead had nothing to do with it. The idea of mass poisoning was actively promoted in the 1980s. It was claimed that lead accumulated in the bodies of aristocrats, causing degeneration. But the reality turned out to be much more practical. First of all, the water in Rome was very hard, with a high calcium content. The pipes quickly became coated with a thick layer of lime scale. This scale acted as a perfect insulator, physically preventing lead from getting into the water. The Roman architect Vitruvius, back in the 1st century BC, advised using clay pipes instead of lead ones, but not out of fear of death, simply because it was cheaper. Secondly, running water was a luxury. 90% of Rome's population got their water from public fountains and cisterns, where there was no lead at all. If the pipes were deadly, The upper class would have disappeared first, not the entire empire. But the Roman elite really did poison themselves with lead. But the source was elsewhere, in wine cups. The Romans loved sweet syrups, sapa, and de frutum. They were made from grape juice boiled strictly in lead cauldrons. Lead gave the drink its sweetness and acted as a preservative. This poisonous syrup was added everywhere, to food, sauces, and wine. That was the real lead bomb. Modern studies of ice cores in the Arctic have confirmed that during the Roman era, atmospheric lead levels were dozens of times higher than normal because of silver mining. But even such concentrations only minimally increase the lead levels in children's blood. This could have lowered IQ by 2 to 3 points, which is unpleasant, but definitely not fatal for the state. The Roman Empire fell because of economic collapse and the breakdown of the army, not because of pipes. Lead was just background noise in the grand finale of a great power. Florentine diamond. This sparkling gem is the legendary Florentine diamond, also known as the Austrian yellow. It weighed 137.45 carats, and it impressed not only with its size, but also with its unusual yellowish hue. According to accounts, the diamond first belonged to the Medici family, then passed to the Habsburg dynasty, becoming part of the imperial regalia. For a long time, the Florentine was kept in the royal treasury in Vienna and was considered one of the most valuable stones in Europe. However, after the collapse of Austria-Hungary in 1918, its traces were lost. The stone was allegedly taken to South America, and according to rumors, was later split into several smaller diamonds to make it easier to sell and to hide its origin. To this day, it is unknown where the parts of the Florentine are, if it was indeed divided. Its history is shrouded in mysterious secrets, and the diamond itself has become a symbol of the lost splendor of European dynasties. Perhaps it still lies today in some private safe, waiting for its new appearance. The Staffordshire Hoard. This is the largest discovery of Anglo-Saxon gold and silver artifacts found to date. The amazing collection includes about 4,600 items and fragments, with a total weight of more than 5 kilograms of gold and 1.5 kilograms of silver, as well as more than 3,500 pieces of jewelry, featuring cloisonné garnet. The items found include parts of military equipment, jewelry, and religious artifacts, demonstrating the high craftsmanship of Anglo-Saxon artisans and the wealth of those who owned these objects. The hoard was discovered in 2009 with the help of a metal detector in a field near the village of Hammerwich, not far from the city of Lichfield in Staffordshire County, England. Archaeologists believe that the treasures were buried between 650 and 675 AD, although some items may be older and date back to the 6th-7th centuries. The Staffordshire hoard includes many military items, such as gold fragments of swords and helmets, which indicates the importance of military culture at that time. The religious artifacts found are of particular value as they testify to the spread of Christianity in Anglo-Saxon Britain. Staffordshire. Today, the Staffordshire hoard is displayed in various museums across England and continues to attract the attention of researchers and history enthusiasts from all over the world. He burned down a wonder of the world for the sake of likes. In ancient Ephesus, on the western coast of Asia Minor, archaeologists have restored the outlines of the famous Temple of Artemis, one of the 7 wonders of the world. Only fragments of columns and the foundation remain, but even that is enough to understand its scale. However, one of the strangest and saddest stories of antiquity is connected with the temple, the story of Herostratus. In 356 BC, he set fire to the temple, not for revenge or faith, but for fame. Herostratus wanted his name to be remembered, even if he had to pay for it with his life. The temple burned down on the same night, according to legend, that Alexander the Great was born. The fire destroyed one of the greatest structures of the ancient world and became an example of senseless destruction. After the fire, Ephesus authorities banned mentioning Herostratus' name under penalty of death, but this only ensured his name survived. The historian Theopompus recorded it, along with the paradox itself. The man who destroyed the masterpiece became immortal precisely because of his crime. When archaeologists in the 20th century excavated the lower layers of the sanctuary, they found traces of an ancient fire, charred beams, and melted fragments of roof tiles. And even in these pieces of ash, a strange irony can be felt. The greatest temple of its era was destroyed not by enemies, not by a natural disaster, but by a man who wanted to be remembered. Today, the name Herostratus has become a symbol of destructive fame. That time remembers not only creators, but also those who tried to be remembered at any cost. Nowadays, we often see bloggers who are willing to do terrible things for the sake of popularity. It turns out people practiced this even thousands of years ago. Shoes for eternal victory. Archaeologists often find items that were made not for life, but for triumph in the afterlife. In 1922, Howard Carter discovered thousands of artifacts in Tutankhamun's tomb, but among dozens of pairs of shoes, there was one. A pair of leather sandals dated to 1300 BC. Their size corresponds to a modern size 44, but the value is not in the dimensions, but in what is depicted on the insoles. The sole under the pharaoh's foot is covered with images of bound captives, representing the 9 bows, Egypt's traditional enemies. The sandals are made of wood, covered with veneer, leather, and gold foil. At the toes and heel, bows are depicted, symbols of hostile peoples. The meaning of the artifact was extremely simple. Every step Tutankhamun took in the afterlife was meant to literally trample his enemies into the ground. Even on the pharaoh's mummy, golden finger covers and sandals made of pure gold were found. This was a world where the ruler's power was confirmed not only by armies, but also by symbolic superiority, which was meant to last forever. The harsh realities of ancient Egypt. During archaeological excavations in Gotse, on the territory of an ancient Egyptian gold mine, iron shackles as old as Moldova were found.
2200 лет.
These heavy shackles became direct evidence of ancient accounts describing the cruel treatment of people who worked in the mines during the reign of the Ptolemaic dynasty. The shackles were discovered in a room that served as an ancient storage area. Inside there were tools for processing ore, fragments of pottery, and 2 sets of shackles. One of them consisted of 7 ring locks connected by iron links, and the other had 4 links and damaged hoops. Their design is strikingly similar to shackles found in the silver mines of Lorient in Greece, which suggests a transfer of technology and possibly methods of forced labor from the Greek world to Egypt. Archaeologist Beranger Redden notes that this discovery confirms ancient texts describing the fates of prisoners of war and criminals who were sent to forced labor. The mine at Ghosh was active in the 3rd to 2nd centuries BC during a period of intense mining expansion under the Ptolemies. Residential houses, streets, and roads were found on its territory. Among them were baths, but behind the facade of organized life, harsh conditions were hidden. Interestingly, archaeologists also found tablets and shards with inscriptions indicating that some workers were paid while others worked under strict control. Actual fragments of the Book of the Dead. In the 19th century, Sir Thomas Phillips, a British collector, dreamed of owning all the books on the planet. He gathered a collection of 60,000 manuscripts and 50,000 books. Among them were 19 fragments of the Book of the Dead. For many years, his heirs plundered and sold off the library at auctions. In the 1970s, these relics passed to Hans Klaus, a well-known book dealer from New York. In 1983, Klaus and his wife donated the fragments to the Getty Museum in Los Angeles, where they remained hidden from the world for many years. Only recently did the museum decide to show the public 7 fragments of these artifacts. The Book of the Dead is an unusual book. It is a collection of 200 prayers and spells intended to help the souls of the deceased on their journey through the afterlife. It was a kind of ancient guidebook for the soul. Despite its name, the ancient Egyptians paid more attention to living life, trying to overcome their fears of death. The goal of the deceased was to reach a paradise that resembled their native Egypt and to unite with the deities, taking part in the eternal cycle of rebirth. Only the upper classes of society could afford to have a Book of the Dead with personalized spells. At the exhibition, visitors could see scrolls that belonged to temple priests named Aset and Ankheseneset, as well as strips of linen with spells for mummification. Special attention is drawn to the scene of the Hall of Judgment, where the scales decide the fate of the deceased. If the heart of the deceased is light, it goes to paradise. If it is heavy, eternal oblivion awaits. The mysterious mask, a strange artifact made of iridium, found in Florida, calls into question the traditional view of ancient civilizations. According to researchers, this item is 10 to 12,000 years old and is made of iridium, a metal that is extremely rare on Earth and is most often found in meteorites. The artifact is striking for its delicacy and masterful craftsmanship, suggesting that ancient artisans possessed technologies far ahead of their time. On the surface of the item, there is an engraving resembling the deity Viracocha, who was regarded in Inca culture as the creator of all things. According to legends, Viracocha came from Lake Titicaca, bringing light and knowledge. This image may be evidence of a connection between ancient peoples and an extraterrestrial civilization, which would explain the use of rare meteoritic material to create this artifact. Historians believe that this item was stolen by Spanish conquistadors in 1715 and taken away on the ship La Concepcion. The ship sank during a storm, and most of the cargo and artifacts remained at the bottom of the ocean. The mask was washed ashore, and according to experts, it represents only a small part of the lost treasures, estimated at $5 billion. A bloody trail in the megastructures of the desert. Archaeology often resembles an investigation into a mass murder case, where the statute of limitations expired thousands of years ago. In Serbia, in a place called Gomolava, scientists opened a shallow pit and discovered a real nightmare. The remains of 77 people were piled together. An ancient epidemic or famine. But when bioarchaeologists cleaned the bones from the soil, the disease theory fell apart. More than half of the dead were children from 1 to 12 years old. Most of the adults were women, and all of them had the same mark of death, unhealed injuries on the back and top of the skull. This was not a fair fight. People were killed from behind as they tried to run away. Genetic analysis added even more mysteries. Out of 77 people, only 3, a mother and her 2 daughters, were related. All the others were strangers to each other. The conclusion is staggering. It was not the clearing of a single village, but a targeted hunt for demographic groups during the political chaos of the 9th century BC, a mass execution, the reason for which the earth hid for 3,000 years. But while in Serbia we see traces of human cruelty, in the sands of Africa, archaeologists find traces of human madness on a different scale. Most people know about Egypt's Great Pyramids, but few realize Sudan has twice as many. The Nubian desert preserves the legacy of the Black Pharaohs of the Kush civilization, which, at the height of its power, controlled territories from the Nile Delta to modern-day Khartoum. Here in Meroe, there are more than 250 pyramids. They are smaller than the Egyptian ones, ranging from 6 to 30 meters in height. But their architecture is unique. They have narrow bases and incredibly steep walls at a 70-degree angle. The Kushites began building them at a time when Egypt had already abandoned this idea due to an economic catastrophe. The burial chambers here were filled with gold, Greek glass, and Roman ceramics, confirming that the forgotten pyramids of Sudan were a center of global trade. Until civil wars and sand wiped them off the map, however, even the ambitions of the pharaohs had their limits, and you can see that in Aswan. There, in the granite quarries, lies an unfinished obelisk, the largest monolith ever attempted to be raised by man. If it had been completed, this giant would have soared 42 meters into the sky, and it would have weighed 1,200 tons. That's like 3 fully loaded Boeing 747s, carved from a single piece of rock. Scientists believe the project was overseen by the female pharaoh Hatshepsut. Thousands of workers spent years chiseling the hardest granite with dolerite balls. Centimeter by centimeter, they freed the giant from the bedrock. But in a single moment, everything collapsed. When the obelisk was almost completely ready to be separated from the rock, a crack appeared in the stone. The enormous effort was undone by a single mistake of nature. The builders simply dropped their tools and left, leaving us with a unique blueprint of ancient technology. The marks of wedges and layout lines are still visible on the surface. They show exactly how the Egyptians planned to overcome gravity. The obelisk remained there, lying in its stone cradle, a symbol of ambition that proved stronger than the abilities of even the greatest builders of antiquity. Ant skull. Catamarca, Argentina. The builders were digging a trench for a water pipe and came across a row of burial urns. In one of them, they found a human skull of a very strange shape. The The local press called it the head of an ant-man. The shape indeed is hard to consider normal. The forehead is stretched forward, the crown is elongated backward. The skull looks as if it was squeezed in a vice. The first reaction of people, naturally, was to think of aliens and genetics, but archaeologists quickly cooled things down. Between the 3rd and 12th centuries, the Ciénaga and Aguada cultures lived in these lands, and they practiced artificial cranial deformation. The process was simple. They would wrap a baby's head with cloth and fix it between wooden boards. The soft bones would gradually change shape. You might ask, why? The answer is simple. Beauty, belonging to a group, social status. Just like today, tattoos or modifications, the body. It's worth noting that there's almost no evidence of harm to health from such practices. A child's skull is flexible. The brain grows, filling the available space. That's why most deformed skulls don't show signs of trauma or developmental delay. There's also an alternative explanation: hydrocephalus, a buildup of fluid. Heidi Dawson-Hobbes pointed to this, but in that case we would expect other changes. Thinned bones, asymmetry. This skull is a good example of why such finds shouldn't be immediately attributed to anatomy. Sometimes a strange shape isn't a message from aliens, but a very human desire to look like your own people. A wooden sculpture of Christ. In the Belarusian village of Nesutici, in the half-ruined chapel of the Church of St. Archangel Michael, restorers discovered a wooden sculpture of the crucified Christ. The find is over, 250 years old, and experts call it a real miracle. After so many years, it has hardly suffered any damage. Research has shown that the sculpture was carved from pear wood, presumably in the 17th century. Its exact origin is still unknown, but there are theories that it could have been made in Italy or Prussia. Such finds are rare. They remind us how many secrets may still be hidden, even in forgotten corners. Altamira Cave. In the province of Cantabria, in Spain, there is one of the most famous caves with prehistoric art in the world. These polychrome cave paintings, which are between 15,000 and 36,000 years old, belong to the Magdalenian culture of the late Paleolithic. On the walls of the cave, there are realistic scenes with animals such as bison, horses, and deer, created using charcoal and natural pigments. In addition to animals, you can also see human handprints here, which gives this place not only artistic, but also deep symbolic value. The cave was accidentally discovered in 1868 by a local resident, Modesto Cubillas. However, it gained worldwide fame thanks to the research of Marcelino Sanz de Sautuola at the end of the 19th century. His work helped convince the world that these works of art were created by prehistoric humans, because for a long time, scientists believed these drawings were modern. The Altamira Cave offers a unique opportunity to take a look at the art and daily life of ancient people. The complexity and expressiveness of the drawings testify to the advanced culture and creativity of the primitive artists. Currently, access to the original cave is restricted to preserve these unique works, but nearby there is a museum with an exact replica of the drawings, allowing visitors to experience the grandeur of this ancient gallery. Something alive behind the Great Wall of China. The Great Wall of China, built during the Ming Dynasty between 1368 and 1644, stretching over 21,000 kilometers, continues to amaze scientists. Over the past 5 centuries, about a third of the wall has been destroyed, but a significant part of the structure still stands. Research has shown that living cement plays a key role in maintaining its strength. Rammed earth, which includes soil and gravel, was used in the construction. New research has revealed that the strength of the wall is influenced by a biocrust layer formed by the growth of cyanobacteria, mosses, or lichens. These organisms form a structure similar to cement, increasing the wall's resistance to erosion, and 67% of the studied sections of the Ming Dynasty wall contained biocrusts. By comparing the strength and stability of rammed earth with biocrust, scientists found that it significantly reduces porosity and salinity, decreases erosion, and increases compressive and shear strength. This living cement apparently makes the Great Wall of China more resistant to climate change and natural wear, highlighting the importance of biological processes in preserving historical monuments. The Sword of Meku. Sometimes weapons tell us more about politics than any chronicles. In the English county of Kent, at an ancient cemetery, archaeologists found a 6th century sword that shocked experts with its state of preservation. This is not just a piece of rusty iron, but a symbol of absolute power that was passed down from generation to generation. The sword's hilt is covered with silver and gold, but the most valuable part was hidden on the blade. There, mysterious runes are engraved, sacred knowledge that was accessible only to the elite in those times. But what truly makes the sword unique are the details that usually rot away after a couple of centuries. Researchers discovered fragments of the scabbard made of wood and leather, which were lined on the inside with real beaver eye fur. Such luxury was beyond reach even for kings, and speaks to the incredible status of the owner. Next to the warrior, they found a gold pendant with the image of a dragon, a family heirloom that connects Britain of that time with Scandinavia and the Frankish kingdoms. Professor Alice Roberts, who has seen hundreds of artifacts, admitted that she had never encountered a sword in such perfect condition. This discovery proves that the early Middle Ages were not a dark age of poverty. It was an era of literate warriors, complex politics, and connections that spanned all of Europe. Of 200 graves in this cemetery, only 12 have been studied, so the main symbols of power remain buried beneath Kent's soil. A bronze military diploma. In the ancient city of Peri, located in the southeastern Turkish province of Adıyaman, archaeologists have discovered a unique find, a bronze military diploma about 2,000 years old. Peri, one of the Kingdom of Commogene's 5 largest cities, remained significant during the Roman era. Excavations in this ancient city began in 2001 and have continued intermittently. During the work, a Roman fountain, large stone blocks, aqueducts, and architectural structures were discovered. Recently, during the final stage of the excavations, a bronze plate with a Latin inscription was found, which turned out to be a military diploma dated to 123 AD during the reign of Emperor Hadrian. The translation of the text, done by Professor Mustafa Hamdi Sayar, confirmed that the diploma belonged to a soldier named Calcilius Antiquus, who served in Syria for 20 years. For his service, he received Roman citizenship and the right to marry. Such diplomas were issued in large numbers, about 100,000 copies. However, most of them were melted down, and only about 800 have survived to this day. Of these, more than 650 have already been studied. The found diploma became a key part of this rare collection. The oldest liquid wine Spanish scientists discovered a glass urn with cremated remains and a liquid that appeared to be the oldest known wine in an ancient Roman underground mausoleum in Carmona. The find is about 2,000 years old. Carmona, located in Andalusia, was a major city of the Roman province of Baetica in the 1st centuries AD. The city has preserved the ruins of an amphitheater and a necropolis, where archaeological discoveries are still being made. In 2019, archaeologists found the entrance to an underground tomb, which is believed to have belonged to a wealthy family. Inside, they discovered 8 niches for urns, 6 of which contained cremated remains. One of the glass urns also contained a gold ring with an image of Janus and a red-colored liquid. Chemical analysis confirmed that it was wine, which had changed color due to chemical processes over 2,000 years. The use of wine in Roman funeral rituals is well documented. Wine was added to the urn after the cremated remains were placed inside to help the deceased in the afterlife. This discovery is important evidence of Roman customs and a confirmation of the longevity of their traditions. Earlier, other interesting artifacts were found in the mausoleum, such as an ancient Roman unguentarium with remnants of perfume made from patchouli essential oil. The oldest double-headed eagle. In Alaka-Hoyuk and Hattusa, the center of the Hittite civilization in Asia Minor, archaeologists found an image of a double-headed eagle, reliefs on gates, impressions on cylinder seals. On some, the eagle holds 2 hairs in its claws. The dating is 14th to 12th centuries BC. This is one of the earliest definite cases of a double-headed bird in the art of the ancient East. Let's figure out who this is. Hittite texts provide no direct evidence for a double-headed eagle cult. Researchers see a possible connection with an earlier character from Mesopotamian myths, Anzud, also known as Imdugud, a griffin eagle associated with storm and lightning. In some later depictions, Anzud appears as a bird with the head of a lioness. Motifs could pass between cultures and change form, but the idea of a powerful celestial bird remained. It is important to separate facts from legends. We cannot confidently name this Hittite deity or describe its official cult. There are few sources. But we can be sure that the double-headed eagle, as a symbol of power and protection, appeared long before Byzantium, the Seljuks, and Rus. Even in Hittite art, it occupies a guarding position, on gates, at passages, next to scenes of rulers. In Antiquity in the Middle Ages, double-headed birds appeared on seals, fabrics, and shields. Among the Byzantines, the symbol is associated with the two halves of the empire, east and west. Among the Seljuks, it is linked to royal power and protection. In later traditions of Eastern Europe, it is connected with statehood. Its origins are in deep antiquity, with fewer specific interpretations than images. The stone spheres of Costa Rica, the Diquís spheres, are unique archaeological artifacts discovered in the Diquís River Delta on Caño Island. This collection consists of more than 300 petrospheres made from gabbro, a volcanic rock similar in composition to granite. The diameter of the spheres ranges from a few centimeters to more than 2 meters, and their weight can reach up to 15 tons. These spheres were created by the pre-Hispanic Diquís culture, which existed from 700 to 1530 AD, although their exact dating and methods of manufacture are still debated among researchers. The stone spheres of Costa Rica are among the most famous stone artworks in the Istmo-Colombian region. Although their purpose remains unclear, there are several hypotheses. Some scholars suggest that the spheres were lined up along roads or approaches to the chief's dwellings, serving as symbols of status and power. Others believe that they may have had astronomical or ritual significance, possibly related to the spiritual or cosmological beliefs of the Diquís culture. The technology behind these stone spheres is still unknown, though they were man-made.
Шлифованы до почти идеальной сферической формы.
However, the exact tools and methods are still unknown. As a result of natural processes and human intervention, many of the spheres have been moved from their original locations, which makes it difficult to further study their original function and symbolism. Treasures beneath the feet of archaeologists. Sometimes to find treasures, you don't need to organize expeditions into the jungle or desert. It's enough to look behind a stone statue that tourists have been passing by for years. In Vietnam, a discovery was made in an ancient citadel that changed the understanding of imperial luxury. The citadel, built in 1397 from colossal stone blocks, is itself a UNESCO World Heritage Site. But the main secret was hidden behind a pair of headless stone dragons located at the very center of the complex. Researchers discovered dozens of extremely rare artifacts there, gilded terracotta decorations shaped like Bodhi leaves. These items are a unique hybrid of ideologies. On one hand, the Bodhi leaf symbolizes Buddhist enlightenment. On the other, each one is engraved with a dragon, the symbol of absolute imperial power. These findings allowed scientists to do what they hadn't been able to for decades, to precisely determine the location of the main hall of the ancient capital, Tay-Do. The golden glaze on the fired clay has been preserved so perfectly that it seems as if the craftsmen finished their work just yesterday. For Vietnam, this is not just gold. This is a map of the lost political center, which was the country's capital for only 9 years, but left its mark for centuries. While traces of emperors were being sought in Vietnam, veteran search member Ronald Klukas on the Isle of Man showed that patience brings luck. In the spring of 2025, with 50 years of experience with a metal detector behind him, he caught a signal that became the highlight of his career. A fragment of a Viking-era gold bracelet was extracted from the ground. This is not just a piece of jewelry, but a real financial instrument from 1,000 years ago. The bracelet, weighing 27 grams, is woven from 8 gold threads. It's a masterpiece of craftsmanship dated to around the years 1000 to 1100 AD. The most interesting part of this find is the cut marks. In the Viking era, gold was both a status symbol and currency. If a warrior needed to pay for goods, he would simply cut off a piece of his bracelet. This find confirms the theory of a dual economy on the Isle of Man, where minted coins coexisted with weighed gold. Why this fragment ended up in the ground, whether it was an offering to the gods or a hidden stash, will remain a mystery. But since May 2025, this rescued gold has become the main pride of the Manx Museum. However, the most ironic find in the history of archaeology happened in the very heart of Moscow. In the chambers of Averkij Kirillov on Bersenevskaya embankment, a giant hoard of silver coins, famous scales from the turn of the 16th-17th centuries, was discovered. The irony is that it was in this very building that the Moscow Archaeological Society was located for 150 years. Dozens of the country's greatest scholars spent years here discussing the fate of ancient civilizations, writing dissertations, and holding symposiums. They had no idea that right beneath the floor of their conference hall lay a fortune. The treasure consists of about 20,000 coins hidden in a vessel that has been perfectly preserved. The silver was walled up under the floor of the residential chambers on the second floor. The scale of the find is comparable to the legendary treasures of Zaryadye. The history of this very plot of land resembles a crime thriller. At first, it belonged to the Baklimishev family, but after the execution of the owner in 1525, it passed into the royal treasury and then to the Kirillov family. Apparently, the 20,000 silver coins were the personal slush fund of the estate owner, hidden in case of disgrace or a coup. Mythical figurines. In ancient Pompeii, archaeologists found 13 terracotta figurines possibly reflecting the myth of the goddess Cybele and Attis, known for their tragic love story, jealousy, and the idea of rebirth. These figurines were discovered in a house named after the fresco of Leda and the Swan, where Zeus is depicted as a swan alongside Leda. The figurines were found under a 2-meter layer. Pamice and scientists suggest that they may depict the ancient myth of Cybele and Attis, which originated in Phrygia, present-day Turkey, and was popular in ancient Greek and Roman cultures. In this story, Cybele falls in love with the young Attis, but his love for another reveals her jealousy, which results in Attis going mad and losing his life under a pine tree. After this, Cybele asks the gods to turn Attis into a pine tree with violets, symbolizing eternal life and renewal. This myth is often interpreted as jealousy and is a symbol of the cyclical nature of life. The Temple of the Falcon with a mysterious message. In Berenice, an ancient port city of Egypt, archaeologists discovered the ancient Temple of the Falcon, which puzzled them because of decapitated birds, unknown deities, and a mysterious inscription: "You cannot boil heads here." At the excavation site, which is over 1,700 years old, 15 decapitated falcons were found on a pedestal and a stone monument depicting 2 unknown gods. Next to the pedestal, a dwelling built in 1850 was found. In another part of the temple, a stele with a Greek inscription was discovered, which reads, "It is forbidden to boil heads here." It is unclear why the falcons were beheaded, why a stele with such an inscription was in the temple, and why a harpoon was placed near the falcons. The stele depicts 3 deities: Harpocrates of Coptos, a child deity, and 2 mysterious gods whose names are unknown. One has the head of a falcon, the other is a goddess wearing a crown with cow horns and a solar disk. It is likely that the beheaded falcons were sacrifices to these gods, particularly to the god with the head of a falcon. Remains of fish, mammals, and eggshells were also found in the temple. The temple shows that ancient religious practices persisted even after the arrival of Christianity. At that time, Christianity was the state religion of the Roman Empire. The beheaded falcons and the ban on boiling heads raise many questions about the cults and beliefs in Berenike. Glass that survived through the centuries. In one of the museums in Europe, there is an object that at first glance looks like a designer bowl from a modern glass workshop. Thin strips of multicolored glass twist into a spiral, forming a dense, even pattern. But this item is about 2,250 years old. It was made during the Hellenistic era. At that time, craftsmen did not yet know how to blow glass. That technology appeared later. The bowl was made by hand. The thinnest threads of molten glass were wound onto a mold, layer by layer, until the vessel reached the desired size and pattern. Each thread was laid with millimeter precision. The colored spirals have not faded, and the glass has not become cloudy. The vessel has kept its shape, as if it just came off the craftsman's workbench yesterday. Such items rarely survive to our time. Glass breaks, cracks, and shatters easily. That's why each such item is a window into the past, into a craft that stood at the intersection of art and technology. The bowl shows that ancient craftsmen were not simpler or more primitive than us. They work the material as if they knew its possibilities better than we do. The golden head of a god and the three faces of death. In the ancient Egyptian city of Hierakonpolis, which was a religious center of the country long before the Great Pyramids were built, researchers made a discovery that still exudes an air of mystery. Right beneath the floor of the main hall of the temple of the god Horus, a golden falcon head was discovered. This is a masterpiece from the era of the Old Kingdom, created more than 4,000 years ago. Horus was the lord of the sun and the main patron of royal power, so his images were always especially luxurious. But this artifact is unique. The head is made of pure gold, and its eyes are inlaid with obsidian, a volcanic glass of deep black color. When you look at this face, it creates a frightening illusion of a living, piercing gaze. The obsidian reflects light in such a way that it seems as if the deity is watching you from the depths of the ages. Scientists believe that the head was hidden under the temple floor during a ritual renewal of the sanctuary or at a time of serious danger. Today, this golden falcon is kept in the desert in the Cairo Museum, remaining one of the few surviving images of gods made from precious metals of that era. This physically represents the belief that gods are present in their temples, watching over human order. But while the Egyptians sought to capture divine majesty in ancient Mexico, art served to explain the harsh and inevitable realities of life. Archaeologists have discovered a unique terracotta work of the Aztecs there, dated to around 1,300 BC. These are three faces nested within each other, symbolizing the endless cycle of human existence. The design of this sculpture is striking in its philosophy. A toothless old man, depicted in two halves, seems to enclose the face of a young man at the very center, and the entire composition is framed by the frozen visage of a deceased person. For the Aztecs, death was not the end of the journey or a tragedy. It was seen as another phase necessary for the eternal renewal of the world. Old age gives way to youth, and death stands guard over its processes, closing the circle. These two finds, the golden falcon and the green one from Egypt, and the three clay faces from Mexico, show how differently our ancestors viewed eternity. For some, it was in unshakable gold in a divine gaze. For others, in the endless change of masks of life and death. But both of these artifacts were created with one purpose: to make us reflect on our place in this grand spectacle of history. Volgograd discs on the Medveditskaya Ridge in the Volgograd region. In Russia, known for its anomalous zones, mysterious stones have been discovered. The find consisted of 6 large round objects, the largest of which reaches 4 meters in diameter. Researchers claim that the structure of the discs is astonishing. Their composition includes tungsten, rare refractory metals used in modern industry and space technology. Ufologists have suggested that these strange objects could be the remains of ancient spacecraft that fell to Earth thousands of years ago and eventually turned to stone over time. Such discoveries resembling primitive flying saucers only fuel theories about ancient aliens who visited our planet. An alternative hypothesis explains the origin of the disks by natural processes of erosion and concretion. Geologists believe that the stone formations could have formed due to high pressure and mineral deposition over millions of years. However, the perfect round shape and the presence of tungsten remain unexplained to this day. The Golden Ring of Jerusalem, the City of David. In the floor of a late Roman early Byzantine building, archaeologists found a small gold ring about 2,300 years old, dating back to the period of the Second Temple and Hellenistic influence. It is smooth, without any inlays, and modest. The ring was not lying separately, but was found in a filled technical layer of the foundation. Right above it was construction fill. This means it was placed there during the laying of the foundation, not lost by accident. And this is not an isolated case. In the same area, within a year, a second similar ring and several small ornaments were found, also under the foundation. If you recall Hellenistic customs, engaged girls or their families would bury jewelry and children's items in the foundation of a new house. It was a symbol of the transition to adulthood and a request for protection. The nature matches. Small size, female context, gold that was worn every day. The artifact is now in the laboratory of the Israel Antiquities Authority. The metal is being analyzed for its alloy. They are searching for traces of garnet or another stone and comparing it with similar items to identify its origin. Hagar Kim. The Hagar Kim Temple, located in Malta, is one of the oldest and most impressive megalithic structures, dating back to the Guntija phase, 3600 to 3200 BC. Situated on a hill overlooking the Mediterranean Sea, this temple complex is one of the greatest archaeological testimonies of ancient civilizations that existed long before the construction of the pyramids in Egypt and Stonehenge in England. Hagar Kim and other megalithic temples of Malta have been recognized as unique masterpieces of architecture. The temple is built from massive stone blocks, some of which weigh up to 20 tons. The complex has a crescent-shaped facade, which is characteristic of Maltese temples of that era. The architectural features include inner halls, niches, and altars, which indicate the ritual and religious function of this structure. Inside the temples, figurines symbolizing fertility were found. An interesting feature of Hagar Kim is its orientation. The temple is designed in such a way that on the day of the summer solstice, rays of sunlight enter through the central entrance and illuminate the inner part of the complex. This fact indicates the astronomical knowledge of the ancient builders and their deep connection with natural cycles. The rotating Egyptian statue. There are rumors that a certain ancient Egyptian statue discovered in a museum mysteriously rotates on its pedestal at night, and for a long time it was believed to be cursed. In reality, everything was much simpler. Researchers stated that they have evidence of external vibrations that cause the 25-centimeter statue to rotate. The museum's Egyptologist, Campbell Price, suggested that the museum might have been struck by an ancient curse. However, Professor Brian Cox gave a more realistic explanation. He believes that it is the differential friction between the stone of the statue and the glass shelf that causes vibrations, making the statue rotate. Expert Steve Gosling installed vibration sensors under the cabinet and detected vibrations caused by passers-by and the movement of cars on the busy road nearby. This phenomenon may attract new tourists to the museum to learn more about ancient Egypt. The spinning days of the Nepsanu statue are over. Now a membrane has been attached to the base of the statue and other exhibits to prevent movement in the future. Things that will confuse a modern person. Archaeology is not just about gold and bones. Sometimes these are objects that make us wonder how people even came up with this in the first place. Small household artifacts often tell us more about the strange habits of the past than any chronicles. And one of these finds makes a modern person cringe with disgust, although 100 years ago it was the height of luxury. We're talking about a vintage purse shaped like a rat. This accessory was created by the famous craftsman Paul Frey for top French jewelry houses at the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries. In the era of late Victorian and early Edwardian aesthetics, such items were considered the height of elegance. Jewelers of that time adored naturalism. Paul Frey created purses not only in the shape of rats, but also in the form of piglets or hares. Today, such items are extremely rare. It was a world where the line between a stuffed animal and an expensive accessory was almost erased. Imagine a lady in a lavish dress taking coins out of a gilded rat. To a modern person, it looks like a scene from a horror movie, but for the elite of the 1900s, it was just a cute touch to their look. But if a rat purse is a matter of taste, then medieval books were a matter of pure practicality in a world without electronics. When bookbinders wanted to spare the reader from extra weight in their bag, they used a clever trick called dos à dos. In French, it translates as back to back. These are two separate books joined into a single volume so that they share a common back cover. If you put such a tome on a shelf, one spine faces outward and the other faces inward toward the cabinet. Most often, the New Testament and the Psalter were bound together this way. There was also a version called tête bêche, or head to toe, where the second book is turned 180 degrees. After finishing one story, you just turn the volume over and read the other. This unusual tradition unexpectedly resurfaced in mid-20th century American science fiction publications. Medical gadgets of the past looked no less peculiar. In the 1820s, during the Regency era, people with hearing impairments used ear trumpets, but these were not modest devices. In the first half of the 19th century, it was a high-style accessory made of gilded silver, brass, or copper. Designers disguised acoustic devices as musical instruments or flowers. A person, for example, could look as if he was holding an elegant silver bud or a miniature trombone to his ear. It was a world where technology was turned into art, hiding physical flaws behind excessive decoration. But sometimes, ancient objects stare right back at us. In Frankfurt, Germany, a unique Roman vessel from the 2nd century AD was found, a face urn. It's a ceramic jug in the shape of a human face with frighteningly realistic features. Scientists still debate why the Romans in the German provinces needed such mask vases. Some believe they were used to store ashes, while others think these were ritual vessels in which the offering took on a face. When you look at such an urn, you get an eerie feeling that the object is watching you. These finds, from the rat purse to the clay face, prove that human imagination has always been limitless, and our ancestors knew how to turn the most ordinary things into something completely alien. The Great Bell of Damazziti is considered the largest bell ever made. It was cast in 1484 by order of King Yanma Damazziti and installed at the famous Shwedagon Pagoda in Yangon, one of the most sacred places for Buddhists in the country. According to historical records, the bell weighed over 290 tons, making it a record holder among such structures. However, the fate of the bell turned out to be tragic. In 1608, the Portuguese mercenary and adventurer Felipe de Brito captured Yangon and decided to take the bell to melt it down for weapons. While moving it across the Bago River, he misjudged its weight, causing the bell to capsize the barge and sink. Since then, it has never been found, despite numerous attempts. Today, the Great Bell of Damazziti remains part of legends and national pride in Myanmar. Its story is a reminder of how culture, spirituality, and greed can intertwine in a single artifact, the fate of which remains a mystery to this day. Ancient calendars in the USA. At Castle Rock Pueblo on the Mesa Verde Plateau in the United States, where Colorado and Utah meet, archaeologists made a remarkable discovery. In an area known for its unusual rock formations and ancient petroglyphs, scientists discovered many new petroglyphs. The new stone engravings, which are about 3,000 years old, may change our understanding of the culture and history of this region. Archaeologist Radoslav Polanco from Jagiellonian University said that numerous lines and spirals engraved on the walls were discovered at an elevation above the known settlements. The spirals, which reach up to 1 meter in diameter, may have been used as calendars to mark important dates and for conducting astronomical observations. These findings have the potential to fundamentally change our perception of this era, when the Pueblo people led an agricultural lifestyle and were engaged in making baskets and mats. The Shroud of Turin and its connection to UFOs. The Shroud of Turin. This Christian relic attracts interest not only among religious communities, but also among paranormal researchers and ufologists. This 4-meter linen cloth bears the imprint of a human body, presumably crucified, which, according to tradition, is associated with Jesus Christ. The relic is kept in the Turin Cathedral and sparks endless debates about its authenticity. From a scientific point of view, radiocarbon analysis indicates its medieval origin, but there is a theory linking it to divine or even extraterrestrial intervention. The uniqueness of the image on the shroud is difficult to explain. It was not painted with a brush, but looks like an imprint, resembling a photographic negative, which is incredible for the technology of that time. The connection with UFOs and extraterrestrial theories arises from the hypothesis that the shroud could have been the product of highly advanced technology. Ufologists claim that the process of creating this imprint could have been connected to the release of powerful energy or a light pulse, similar to modern laser technologies. Some believe that the resurrection of Jesus, accompanied by a miraculous event, could have been the result of intervention by extraterrestrial civilizations who shared their knowledge with humanity. However, these are just theories. A feast for the strong-willed. If the Roman aqueduct turned out to be not as dangerous as previously thought, then the menu of ancient civilizations is enough to truly horrify a modern person. The diet of the past was determined by the availability of resources and the display of status. One of the main delicacies of the Roman elite was the dormouse, a rodent the size of a rat. They were specially fattened, then baked or fried with spices. Historians note that for wealthy Romans, this was a gourmet dish, while for the poor in Egypt, the same rodents became the only source of protein after the Nile floods. Garum, Rome's favorite fish sauce seems no less strange. It was made from the entrails of anchovies from Cumbria, which fermented for months in open vats under the sun. The smell was so strong that garum production workshops were moved outside the city limits, and at the emperor's feast they served truly exotic parts: peacock tongues, flamingo brains, and parrot heads. People thought the harder a bird was to catch, the higher the eater's status. Eating unusual animals lasted into the Middle Ages. In England, a pie made from lamprey, a snake-like parasite with a sucker mouth, was a symbol of luxury. The nobility loved this delicacy so much that, according to legend, King Henry I died from overeating his favorite pies. The history of food proves that what we consider disgusting today was once a measure of power, health, and social status. Culinary values shift, but memories of feasts with rodents and parasites remain in history's kitchen archives. Ancient Roman giant. In an area near Rome, archaeologists discovered a unique ancient human skeleton with gigantism. Standing at 202 centimeters tall, the man stood out among his 3rd century contemporaries, where the average height was about 167 centimeters. Gigantism is an extremely rare condition, affecting about 3 people per million, and is associated with a malfunction of the pituitary gland during childhood. Previously, partial skeletons were found in Poland and Egypt, which were presumed to indicate gigantism, but the Roman discovery became the first confirmed case from Antiquity. The skeleton was found in 1991 during excavations of a necropolis in Fidene, managed by Rome. The archaeological team immediately noted the unusual length of the tomb, and later studies confirmed the peculiarities of the bones. Researchers found damage to the skull consistent with a pituitary tumor, as well as disproportionately long limbs and signs of bone growth in early adulthood. The man's early death, presumably between the ages of 16 and 20, may indicate issues related to gigantism. The skeleton was found without any burial goods, and his burial did not differ from the traditions of that time, which suggests that he was accepted by society. The symbolism of this find highlights the Roman upper class's interest in holy people.
Аномалиями.
The tomb of Tutankhamun. This discovery became one of the most famous archaeological finds of the 20th century. This is the final resting place of the young pharaoh, who ruled Egypt from 1332 to 1323 BC during the 18th dynasty. Unlike other royal tombs, its size and decoration are quite modest, which is probably due to the unexpected death of Tutankhamun at a young age. It is possible that this tomb was not originally intended for the pharaoh, but was adapted for him due to a lack of time. Despite its modest size, the tomb surprised researchers with the quantity and splendor of the burial items. Among the finds were gold jewelry, household items, a throne, furniture, clothing, and of course, the famous golden burial mask of Tutankhamun, which has become a symbol of ancient Egyptian culture. A total of more than 5,000 artifacts were found, each of which helped reveal important details about the life and death of the pharaohs. The tomb was discovered in 1922 by the British archaeologist Howard Carter and his team. Their discovery caused a real sensation around the world, not only because of the enormous amount of treasures, but also thanks to the exceptional preservation of the artifacts, which shed light on the era of Tutankhamun's reign. The most important difference between Tutankhamun's tomb and all the others is its preservation. It has remained in its original state. This discovery became a landmark event in Egyptology and still remains one of the most important archaeological discoveries of all time. Let's hope it won't be the last. The key to the archives of humanity. We are used to thinking that history began with the appearance of writing in Mesopotamia about 5,000 years ago, but new discoveries prove otherwise. Humanity tried to transmit information much earlier. Researchers from Germany analyzed hundreds of Aurignacian culture artifacts and discovered a system that is 40,000 years old. These are not just drawings of animals, but structured sequences of dots, crosses, and V-shaped signs carved on mammoth bones and flutes. Computer algorithms showed that these signs are not random. The informational density of these patterns is 15% higher than that of ordinary decoration. This system remained stable for 10,000 years. Knowledge was passed down from generation to generation long before people built the first cities. Essentially, it was the first social
в истории, позволившая людям обмениваться
information during the Ice Age. And although this tradition disappeared, it laid the foundation for everything we call civilization. A discovery in southeastern Poland also shows the importance of connections between ancient peoples. In 2011, during the construction of a highway near Jarosław, archaeologists found a tiny clay object called a pintadera. This is a 2,500-year-old stamp that was used to apply patterns to fabric or leather. The strangest thing is that such items are typical for the Great Hungarian Plain, not for the territory of Poland. The pintadera from Nienowice has the shape of a pyramid with a broken handle and a complex geometric pattern on its base. Scientists found out that it was used in the technique of resist dyeing. Wax or resin was applied to the fabric with a stamp, and then it was dipped in dye. This is direct evidence that the Iron Age was not a time of isolated tribes. Southeastern Poland was part of a giant trade network through which not only goods, but also design technologies traveled for thousands of kilometers. But how do we even know the exact dates of all these events? The answer was found on February 27, 1940, in a laboratory at the University of California. Chemists Martin Kamen and Samuel Rubin conducted an experiment on a cyclotron, one of the first particle accelerators. They bombarded graphite with deuterium nuclei and discovered the elusive isotope carbon-14. Scientists of that time believed it existed for only a fraction of a second, but it turned out that its half-life is 5,730 years. This discovery became a time machine for archaeology. In 1949, Willard Libby proved that by measuring the residual radiation in organic remains, it is possible to determine with an accuracy of up to a decade when a person lived or a tree grew. For this work, he received the Nobel Prize, and historians gained a tool that cannot be deceived. Carbon-14 allows us to see into the past up to 50,000 years ago, turning every discovered skeleton or scrap of fabric into an accurate chronometer. The secrets beneath our feet never end. While you were watching this video somewhere out there or under the floor of an old building, archaeologists are already uncovering another artifact that could become a global sensation tomorrow. The real story always turns out to be more interesting than any fiction. Let me know which discovery seemed the craziest to you, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, everyone.